What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 7. First look.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over each position and give you my first look for NFL Week 7. And if you stay to the very end after all my picks and after I show you the Draft Dashboard tools, I'll give you my super secret sleeper pick that no one's talking about. Okay guys, DraftKings and FanDuel Week 7, we're looking at the quarterback position. I like Josh Allen from the Buffalo Bills playing the Miami Dolphins, who have the absolute worst defense overall, and they give up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Josh Allen has averaged 18.3 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 19 fantasy points last week. He's rushing the ball 8.2 times per game. He got 10 rushes last week. He's projected at 15.1 fantasy points here in Week 7. He's $6,500 DraftKings salary and $1,200 more on FanDuel. He's got a fantastic matchup versus the Miami Dolphins. Vegas only thinks there's going to be 39 points scored in this game, but take a look at this. The Buffalo Bills are favored by 16.5, so Vegas thinks they're going to score most of those points. Great matchup for Josh Allen. He could get in the end zone for a rushing touchdown. Miami Dolphins are worst in the league defending the rush. This is a home game, so I like Josh Allen here versus the Miami Dolphins. This guy is a daily fantasy pick only. You gotta have a short memory in DFS. He had a terrible week last week, but he's got a great matchup this week in a huge projected point game total. So you can't ignore this kind of stuff when it comes to DFS. So I like Jared Goff from the LA Rams playing the Atlanta Falcons, who have the third worst defense overall, and they give up the second most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Jared Goff has scored 16.6 fantasy points per game on the season. He only scored 2 fantasy points last week. He's projected at 18.9 fantasy points here in Week 7. He's $6,200 DraftKings salary and $1,600 more on FanDuel. They've really got him priced up over there on FanDuel. I like that DraftKings price. His ownership is going to be low, or not as high as it would be if he had a good game last week. Vegas thinks there's going to be 53.5 points scored in this game. They've got the Rams favored by 3. I think Jared Goff bounces back. He's got great wide receivers: Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks, Gerald Everett, a receiving tight end. I think he's going to go off in Week 7. So I like Jared Goff here versus the Atlanta Falcons.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $100 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
and then we'll send you $100 PayPal.
So it's that easy.
And we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video.
So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, NFL Week 7, FanDuel and DraftKings picks. We're looking at the running back position. I like Leonard Fournette from the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the Cincinnati Bengals, who have the 5th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Leonard Fournette is averaging 19.1 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 18 fantasy points last week. This guy's been on fire. He's averaging 19.2 rushes per game and 6 pass targets per game. So a ton of volume on the field for 91% of the snaps. He touches the ball 41% of that time. He's projected at 18.4 fantasy points here in Week 7. He's $7,000 DraftKings salary and $900 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 43.5 points scored in this game, and they have Jacksonville favored by 3.5. Great matchup for Leonard Fournette. This guy's still underpriced for the volume he's getting. So I like Leonard Fournette here versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, let's take a look at another running back who I also think is underpriced here in Week 7. I like Josh Jacobs from the Oakland Raiders playing the Green Bay Packers, who have the 10th best defense overall, but they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Josh Jacobs has scored 16.7 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 32 fantasy points last week. He's averaging 17.6 rushes per game. He doesn't get a lot of pass targets, but he got 4 last game, and he had 26 rush attempts last game. That's 30 touches. So he's the workhorse for Oakland, projected at 10.9 fantasy points here in Week 7. He's only $5,000 DraftKings salary and $1,700 more on FanDuel. So I love that DraftKings price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 46.5 points in this game, and they've only got the Oakland Raiders behind by 6.5. So this game might be closer than a lot of people think. A lot of injuries for Green Bay. So I like Josh Jacobs here versus the Green Bay Packers. Okay guys, if you're getting any value from this video, please hit that red subscribe button. We put out new fantasy football videos every day. So if you hit that subscribe button and ring that bell notification, you won't miss out on any of our new fantasy football videos. Tons of free stuff coming your way. It only takes a second, and it helps us push out more fantasy football content for you guys to consume each and every day. It's because of you subscribers that make this possible. So thank you for supporting this channel. Okay, DraftKings and FanDuel picks, Week 7, we're looking at the wide receiver position. I like Cooper Kupp from the LA Rams playing the Atlanta Falcons, who have the 3rd worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Cooper Kupp has averaged 22.3 fantasy points per game on the season. He only scored 6 fantasy points last week, so I think he's got a nice matchup and a nice bounce back game coming his way. He averages 11.5 fantasy points on the season. He only got 6 targets last week, so that was a big part of it. He's on the field for 88% of the snaps, and he touches the ball 18% of that time. So normally he's got monster usage, projected at 18.7 fantasy points here in Week 7. He's $7,400 DraftKings salary and $400 more on FanDuel. We've got that huge game total, 53.5 points, with the Rams favored by 3. So I like Cooper Kupp as a nice stack with Jared Goff. I think these two get it going this week. The Atlanta Falcons have been giving it up to quarterbacks, giving it up to wide receivers. So I'm expecting a big bounce back week. So I like Cooper Kupp here versus the Atlanta Falcons. Okay, looking down in the mid-range salary, I like Kenny Golladay from the Detroit Lions playing the Minnesota Vikings, who have the 6th best defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing wide receivers. Kenny Golladay has averaged 18.1 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 20 fantasy points last game off of 9 pass targets. He's averaging 9 targets per game. He's on the field for 90% of the snaps and touches the ball 17% of that time. He's projected at 14.8 fantasy points here in Week 7. He's $5,800 DraftKings salary and $1,300 more on FanDuel. So I think that salary is a little bit too low here. Vegas thinks there's going to be 44 points scored in this game. They have the Detroit Lions favored by 1, so a close competitive game. This is a home game. Matthew Stafford's been throwing the ball down the field. He's got the longest yards per pass average in the NFL, so it only takes 1 or 2 of those long bomb catches for a touchdown to have an explosive week. So I like Kenny Golladay here versus the Minnesota Vikings. Real quick guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL, MLB is still going, NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay guys, DFS, Week 7, DraftKings and FanDuel, we're looking at the tight end position. I like Jimmy Graham from the Green Bay Packers playing the Oakland Raiders, who have the 7th worst defense overall, and they give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Jimmy Graham has scored 6.8 fantasy points per game on the season. He only scored 4 fantasy points last game off of 5 pass targets. He's averaging 4 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 63% of the snaps, and he touches the ball 11% of that time. He's projected at 9.4 fantasy points here in Week 7. He's only $4,200 DraftKings salary, and he's $1,600 more on FanDuel. This is a home game, great matchup versus the Oakland Raiders, and the Green Bay Packers have got quite a few injuries over there with their pass catchers. So I've got a feeling they're going to game plan Jimmy Graham into this one. I think he sees an increased amount of targets, red zone looks, and I think he gets a touchdown this week. So I like Jimmy Graham here versus the Oakland Raiders. And one of my favorite plays of the slate, we just saw this guy return and put up a monster stat line. I like Hunter Henry from the LA Chargers playing the Tennessee Titans, who have the 7th best defense overall, but they give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Hunter Henry is averaging 21.5 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 33 fantasy points last game on 9 pass targets. He's averaging 7 pass targets per game, on the field for 73% of the snaps, touches the ball 14% of that time. He's only projected at 5.5 fantasy points here in Week 7, but I think that projection's a little low and it's going to come up throughout the week. He's only $4,000 DraftKings salary and $1,700 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 40.5 points scored in this game. They've got the Tennessee Titans favored by 2, so I like Hunter Henry here versus the Tennessee Titans.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
You've unlocked the bonus content. My super secret sleeper pick for NFL Week 7 is Darius Slayton from the New York Giants playing the Arizona Cardinals, who have the 2nd worst defense overall and give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Darius Slayton is averaging 9.2 fantasy points per game on the season. He only scored 6 fantasy points last week, but he had a tough matchup and he got 8 pass targets. He's averaging 5 pass targets per game. He's projected at 8.6 fantasy points here in Week 7. He's $4,100 DraftKings salary and $1,300 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 49.5 points scored in this game. They have the Giants favored by 2.5. This is a home game, so I like Darius Slayton here versus the Arizona Cardinals.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again and good luck.